and this is where I come in, is I did a lot of work with regard to organizations. In fact, I also presented in the American Academy of Management my work, where I surveyed around 200 organizations in India. And I found out that the organizations that were successful were the organizations that were ambidextrous. When I use the word ambidextrous, I mean to say that organizations have the capacity to exploit and also to explore at the same time. Now, what has happened is that our competency framework, on the basis of which we map our leaders on the competency, the knowledge, skills, and everything, I think that is predetermined. That is basically a relic of the past, and that has been arrived at based upon a post hoc rationalization of what made managers succeed in the previous time over. All of us know that the world has changed, and the world is changing. Its technology-induced change is extremely disruptive. There are new algorithms and new data require new way of working, and therefore that requires a new set of competencies. So what I think is today in fact, quite an example which one saw in Coca-Cola also, which also one saw in metal, where people who had the right skill set, in fact, the CFO of Coca-Cola was made the CEO, and he failed miserably. There was another person, a lady in metal, I think it was Jill Brad or somebody. And she failed, and she was one of the great brand manager, but she had no understanding of finance, no understanding of strategy. So you have the best of the person, you promote them on the traditional basis, on the basis on which they exploit business, and they end up becoming a failure. Now, there are another set of things that has happened recently, and Dr. Singh also talked about it, is about the amount of ethics, the ethical values, and the amount of transparency that has to be there in the system. Infosys, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I read, Infosys and Tata Sons are both examples where a person probably did not have the same values or is not practicing the same values with the organizational founders or organization believes it should have. What I mean to say right now is that the entire competency framework has to be expanded to take into account at least 4 things. 1, the capability to exploit. Second, the capability to explore. The capability to explore is all about being entrepreneurial. It's all about taking risks. It's all about making mistakes. Then is the capability to mentor your millennials, the new set of the people who are there in the organization who have to be dealt differently. And 4th is the capability to espouse the values which the organization is trying to have or trying to declare. So I think the entire framework probably has to be taken a relook, and the entire mentorship program, entire talent pipeline program has to be seen afresh. Are we trying to make managers develop on path-beaten competencies that gave them success the previous time over, or are we trying to bring them up in such a way that they're going to think about the organization, let's say in 2030, 2050, 2060? Thank you, sir.
Now, Mr. Kidwai, what is your opinion and your understanding of this making the pipeline, leadership pipeline?
Sure. Am I audible? Yeah. So, in fact, I would like to build on the points that my co-panelist brought up, and the fact that what brought the leaders where they are would not be able to take them to the next level. And I think it's important that the organizations take the context in mind. The references are changing. If we look at the energy sector, what is happening is there's a lot of digitization that is happening. You talked about the smart grids, unmanned grids. Whether we like it or not, this is going to come. This is going to be the reality of time. These grids would be unmanned. The technology will the things would get connected. There is an amalgamation of the IT with the OT, and the result of this is that the competencies are changing. The requirements, the expectations from the leaders of today are very different from the expectations that we would have from the leaders of tomorrow. And unless the organization are, number one, cognizant of this, and many a times, to your point, the organizations are not. We are still living in the old world. We are still preparing people from the old references. These boundaries are actually melting. So maybe tomorrow you would have people who would be transversal. You would not need experts from the energy sector, from utilities, to be able to be at the helms of affairs for these organizations would change. You would have people who would have understanding of the networks, people who would have understanding of tomorrow the demands would change. Maybe because of the environmental and awareness, public would want specific kind of energy at their places. They would want green energy, so now the expectation from the leaders who were all these years preparing people, lot of huge manpower, the expectation was that the competency required for a leader is that they would be able to take care of huge manpower spread across in remote locations. That may change. They may be, what is required is leaders who would be able to bring this change, who would be able to develop people for tomorrow, who would be able to identify the needs of tomorrow, and who would be able to understand the market and the way the market is changing. So as organizations, what we will have to do is we will have to prepare for the future and competencies of the future. So first thing is, as aware organizations, and I can use reference of Schneider, what we do there is that we are preparing the competency framework for leaders of tomorrow. We've created a new set of competencies. We're evaluating our existing set of people on their preparedness, on their readiness to migrate to the next level. And then their ability to help others to migrate to that level. And that is the competency that we are working on. We've created the framework, we've started deploying, we've started building those capabilities of digitization, of their ability to understand digitization, of their ability to understand the external context. Those are some of the changes that we are bringing in.
If you permit me, can I make a sentence about that? People are totally confused. When we talk about building leadership pipeline, it's a different from succession planning, please. Because take globally, how many persons from within they become the CEO? They get out. So that's why you take the example of BHEL. How many CEOs BHEL has given? How many CEOs NTPC has given? So you find out that when we talk about leadership pipeline, we are having multiple leaders. That's an important point. Because you find that the moment you talk about in public sector also, you may not grow actually the CEO of Power Grid, but you can go somewhere else. Right. So the word is available. And I would like to give only one example, sir. MDI has given 5 directors for IIMs. Lucknow has given 6 directors for IIMs. So I find that the role of the CEO, role of the HR people is to build a leadership pipeline, not necessarily for your company, but also for other companies, so that you are building commanders who would be controlling and protecting your interest also. So that's why many times we are totally confused when we talk about leadership pipeline, that we talk about because you find that who will reach there? Only one person will be reaching there, 2 persons will be reaching there. You can't actually create every person who would be aspiring to become the CEO. So that's why I thought that to develop, so let's focus more on that, how the leadership pipeline can be built.
Very true, sir. Very true. Because initially people thought that we are talking of an organization-specific thing, how to create. But it is very clear from your sentences that it is not merely for a particular company organization, but how many leaders you are creating for taking over jobs in different organizations, and that is what should be really called the pipeline, leadership pipeline, making a pipeline. That is fine. Right.
I think I just want to add a point what you said, Dr. Singh. I think the way leadership pipeline was developed some years back to compare to what it is being today there is a shift happening in that. today, for example, people are not necessarily looking for people from the energy sector to be leaders in the energy sector. An example I can give you is last year when Semcorp came into India, they recruited a CEO of that business who was a McKinsey consultant with 23 years of experience, right? So they are now, companies are looking for diverse skill sets. For example, as JSW Group, I'm looking at leadership pipeline for the group. I may not necessarily look at energy for energy, but I may look at people from energy who could move into steel or into infrastructure or into something else. So I think there is a set of capabilities or competencies that have to be commonly developed. But at certain levels, there are also certain specific skills that have to be added, which will make that big difference. Now, the challenge you face in leadership pipeline is, do you move the guy first and then he develops that skill, or do you make sure he has the skill and then he develops? I think today organizations, given the uncertainty, have to have more risk-taking ability in making people move from one sector to another and then, proving themselves. I, for example, moved from financial services to cement sector, which is building materials, to infrastructure sector. Now, they have different HR perspectives on this, but there are still some commonalities across all these sectors.
Perfect, right. Now, the study conducted by BIMTech, it had thrown a question that what should be the competencies of leader. So, Kedwai Sahab, आप इसमें विचार दीजिए. What?
Sure.
Just 3-4.
Sure. So, I mean, as I said, I think transformation, ability to bring transformations, change management, ability to learn and unlearn are things that we are very particular about, and building capability in the organization is something that we are very particular about our future leaders. How equipped are they? How adept are they in bringing more leadership and building leadership within the organization and building capability in the organization?
Yeah, I'd exactly add on to what he's saying and also take people along with them. So what I would call servant leaders or something like that, who take people along with them. And sir, again, answering your question that you had commented was, how many CEOs or directors have you given? I think as far as Power Grid is concerned, we have done our bit on that. So,
30 years back, we used to call BHEL as Mother Dairy. Then also NTPC. For all thermal, Mother Dairy was NTPC.
So Trivedi, you remember that when several companies got together, luckily you had a very great visionary leader, Narayan Saab. Because I remember very well sitting in your guest house, conducting the meeting how to build a power grid culture. And then Chawla, you also had a very good person actually in the area of HR. So the point which I'm making only one point, that I made only one point, that get out that everyone would be CEO whom you are developing in the company. Build the leaders so that they can be competent, capable of handling, managing, innovating. And one point, since you asked the question, today we don't need leaders. We don't need business managers. We require warriors. If you don't create warriors, after some time the company will die down. So all the persons who say that you are not a manager, you are not a general manager, you all are warriors. Because that's where we are going to fight the war. So now the business word is nothing, it's a word of war.
and sir, I have one point as far as public sector is concerned, that HR, the thumb rule in HR is, I would say, what I have come across is that treat everybody similar by treating them differently. But where do we have the flexibility to treat each person differently as far as the public sector is concerned? That was the point.